Intrigue Media. Get noticed, get found.
Good to go. So, good morning, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about reversing, negative reversing, and pendulum theory. This is actually going to be a really easy one because Paul had asked me to actually come up with this reversing, negative reversing, and pendulum theory. So I knew exactly what to do right away. Who's heard of these concepts before? Awesome. So this will be easy. Reversing. The act of driving your car backwards. So that's when, you're backing out of a spot. Maybe you pulled in the wrong way. Negative reversing, any guesses? Driving your car forward. So it's the opposite of the reverse. It's a negative reverse. That's where you drive your car. Pendulum theory. Oops. Oh, there was things there. So pendulum theory, as I understand it, is the thought that it's actually the pendulum which is powering the clock. It's not true. It's battery in the back that's powering the pendulum. The end. So what is actual reversing? So remember as a kid, I don't know, for me anyway, my parents would get a new fridge, they'd get a new stove, and the first thing I wanted to do was make a fort. I wanted to play in the box. Hanging out in that box was a great place to be because there's all sorts of things. It could be a rocket ship. It could be, as I said, a fort. I mean, it could be that car that we were looking at. It could be any number of things. That's about the only time being put in a box is good, especially when it comes to a sales environment. So what is reversing as a whole? Reversing is the ability to ask a question, follow up a question with another question to help understand the true meaning of what a client is saying to you. Often when we're in a sales experience, clients will say things, they'll ask us things, and a lot of times in communication, whether it's subconscious or conscious, there's an underlying meaning behind the question that's being asked. Sometimes that's to help qualify who we are. Sometimes that's to help disqualify what it is that we're doing. But 9 times out of 10, there's always a reason why the person you're talking to is asking you a question. Reversing is a strategy that helps us, whether it be salespeople or in production, whoever it is, to help really figure out, why am I being asked this? Is it a qualify or disqualify? And how should I best respond to avoid being put into a box? So using reversing strategies, as I said, allows you to maintain control of the conversation. When you're in a sales environment at some level, the best position is to be the person who's leading the conversation. Now that's not saying that you're going to be in full control because it's an 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time you want your clients to be speaking because that's where a lot of the value comes. 20% of the time you want to be speaking. Now in a 1-hour meeting, that actually equates to a fair amount of time that we're going to be talking. So we want to make sure that when we are talking, we're prepared and not disqualifying ourselves in these situations. As I said, it also gets the prospect to clarify the question and bring out the true meaning, helps you get more insight into the real reason, and most importantly, keeps you out of a box. There's a couple of rules when it comes to reversing. I think a good thing to state when talking about sales theories and sales practices is when you start learning about them, there's, at least for me, I found that I wanted to do it to everybody. And it kind of became a game, and maybe you hear it around here sometimes. I don't know by a show of hands how many people have heard, that's a great question, what made you bring that up right now? Right? And it's something that you do to someone at that point. I know at the very, very beginning, I would do it with friends, I'd do it with family members, I'd do different things like that, and it's good practice. But the differentiator being that doing it to someone becomes weaponized and it's a little bit of a negative experience because then you're doing it to manipulate somebody. When you're using any sort of reversing, negative reversing, pendulum theory, any of these sales things that we're talking about, and you do it with someone with the best intentions in mind, it really helps create a genuine experience, and it's a little bit different. So that's just a caveat that I like to add to everything when I talk about sales theory. So the rules for this is it often takes 2 or more reverses to get the real answer. The first 2 answers given are generally high level and intellectual in nature. And if the same question is asked twice, answer. Again, when it comes down to doing it with someone versus against someone, if you're sitting in a conversation with someone and I say, or someone asks me a question.
What's the price?
What's the price? That's a great question. What made you bring that up right now? What's the price?
Yeah, what's the price?
What's the price? That's a great question. What made you bring that up right now? You're going to get very frustrated very quickly with that thing because I'm being evasive. I'm not answering the question. That was a very true thing that you've asked twice. If you keep going down that road, you're going to end up with a very frustrated client. It's going to go from very either, an okay conversation to over very, very quickly. So these are some rules to keep in mind when doing that. So we had just a little example there, but what does reverse look like? So reverses, and these are standard reverses, and I'll get into some of the variations a little bit later. But standard reverses can sound something like, you must be telling me for a reason, you're pointing that out because, when you say blank, what does that mean? If you could do blank, what would happen then? If you were me, what would you do? Supposing I said, and my personal favorite, and. That's it. And so we tend to get typecast in our situations, and I know it's used a lot around here, which is, that's a great question, why'd you ask? It is a very, very good reverse. But you want to make sure that if you're using this, you're not saying the same thing over and over and over again, because if the client asks you a question, what's the price? That's a great question, what made you bring that up right now? Well, I don't know, I was hoping to learn a little bit more about the way that the structure works. Well, that's a great question, what made you bring that up right now? Well, when can you deliver it? That's a really good question. What made you bring that up right now? It becomes redundant, and people will catch on to this stuff very, very quickly. Now, it's very important that when we look at reversing, that we arm ourselves with different types, so it's not the same thing. The person isn't getting a negative thing. They're not seeing it as a technique. They're seeing a genuine interest and genuine inquisitiveness to be able to figure out the true meaning behind it. So softening statements. So we talked about reversing, and actually the example that I used included a softening statement. So a softening statement comes down to, has anyone heard of strokes versus warm fuzzies or cold pricklies, strokes versus stamps? Has anyone heard that before? So the vast majority of people in our lives are what's called stroke deprived. So if you take a look at some of the interactions you have, whether it's professionally or personally, everyone likes to feel good about themselves. And what a stroke is a way of doing that to somebody else versus a stamp. And I'll show you the contrast in that. And a stroke is something like, that's a really good question. I've never been asked that before. It's something to make someone feel good about themselves versus a stamp was like, that was stupid. Well, why'd you ask that? There's a very big contrast in terms of how the client is going to respond to that and what kind of reaction you're going to get. So it's very important to know that people out there in your lives, whether it's through, again, personal or professional, need strokes. Everyone's gonna look for them, and sometimes you'll hear it and people will search them in some of the things that they're saying. So if we can add softening statements to our reverses, it helps A, the client feel better about themselves, and B, it allows you to kind of take the emphasis away of the fact that you're not actually answering a question. So when you add these two together and you put things in front of it like, good question, I'm glad you asked that, I've never been asked before, I appreciate that, that makes sense. This sounds important to you. Adding these things in front of any sort of reverse that you're doing is a very good practice. It's not the only practice, and it's a very, very good one.
I'm just going to jump in for a second.
Yeah.
Last week at our officer call, we were talking about softening statements, or we were talking about this indirectly when James was talking about the meaning that we have in word area, and how there was a visible lack of that, and it ended up being okay with that scenario, but this is the kind of thing that we want to add into most of these scenarios when we're in content sessions where people are asking us, well, can't we do this? I'd like to do this, and saying things like that.
It has to be genuine. Yeah, I mean, if you've been asked the question before, you're like, I've never been asked that before, it's not genuine.
Yeah.
But so, we have to make sure that it's really coming from like a genuine perspective all the time. And I mean, to speak to on the other side of it, like when I'm in conversations with someone, like these are all really great questions.
Yep.
That makes me feel good, right? I don't know why it does it, but it does, and so it's interesting that we need to be giving people those strokes as much as possible.
And you guys added some really good points, and it goes back to what I was saying about weaponizing versus going through something together. And that's the big thing, is if you're doing it for the sake of doing it, and you're discounting somebody, and you're fluffing them up for whatever reason to get a result, That's not the good way of doing it. That's not the way our process works. That's not why we do and use the tactics that we use. The reason why we use the tactics that we use and the reason or techniques that we use is because of the fact that it's our job to find out the true meaning behind why our client wants to do business, whether it's with us or with anyone else, and it's the why behind all of this. Why are we sitting in a room together? What is it you're hoping we might be able to bring to the table? And so if you're going through it and, as Paul said, you're saying, well, that's a great question, even though in the back of your mind you're saying, I've been asked that 50 times today, actually, or I've never been asked that before, and it's been 50 times today. These are things that they're almost unethical, because then you're sitting there and you're lying to the prospect right there at the beginning. So there's other ways, and that's why I'm saying when you broaden your horizons in ways that you can incorporate reverses or softening statements, and we'll talk about negative reverses as well, it's these things that we can kind of build our technique bank, so we're always having a genuine conversation with our clients. So what does a reverse look like? This is an example of a softening statement in reverse. How long does it take to make a video? That's a question that I frequently get asked when we're out with our clients. Now, there could be any number of meanings as to why the client's asking that. They could want to get it started tomorrow. They could want to get it started 6 weeks from now. They could have an uncle that can make a video in 2 days or 2 minutes, whatever that might be. And if we were to say, all right, could someone ask me the question? Really quickly. It actually takes about 3 weeks to make a video once we get content approved and go through a storyboard session together. Now that's typically what our process, 2 to 3 weeks is. We go through a content, we go through a storyboard session. Now to Paul, that might be a completely unacceptable answer. He's like, I want the video up next week. He's instantly disqualified me. Maybe he doesn't want to do storyboarding. Maybe storyboarding, he killed his puppy as a child. Whatever that might be, you never know. But unless we ask a question or follow it up with, I'm glad you asked that. It's really going to be important if we're going to work together. But what made you bring that up right now? Or when are you hoping to have something like this started? That's going to allow us to have Paul answer the question back, us really understand what he was trying to do and answer appropriately. So that way, again, we're keeping ourselves out of a box and we're not getting into a situation where, I'll use cold calling as an example. Frequently we cold call people. And one of the first questions that we get asked, hey, you guys are those signs in the washroom, right? Well, no, but we do video advertising. Well, I don't like video advertising. I've tried it, no thanks, goodbye. Now, I know after I would hang up the phone on that situation that I'd get frustrated, because if I look around this room and I look at all the great work we've done for our clients, video advertising is a very big piece and it's how we got started and it adds a lot of value in the communities we're operating. However, there's a lot of other things that we do and might be able to bring to the table for that client that they have no idea about now. They've instantly written us off. They said, Intrigue Media, the people in the bathroom from Guelph. That's not what it is that we do. So this is a prime example of why reversing, whether it's a softening statement or not, is able to help us stay out of that area that we never want to be in. So different types of reverses. So we've talked about standard reverses, we've talked about softening statements, but there's a lot more to it than that. And what some of these look like are talking to self. So an example of that, a client can ask you a question, what does that video cost? What does the video cost? It's really dependent on, and you start a good dialogue with yourself before going into, I've got a couple ideas. Sorry, what made you bring that up this very moment? Client's going to tell you, and away you go. So it's a little bit of it's a technique that allows you to you're struggling with it. You're fighting a little bit, you have the answer, but you want to know a little bit more information. Start-stop reverse. Start-stop reverse could be something along the lines of how long does it take to get a video created? Well, typically when we're creating videos, it's going to take actually before I get into that, is there any reason why you're asking this question right now? I feel we're on page, I feel like you're on page 5 and we're on page 3. Can you help me out? Again, so it's you're starting, you know the answer, you're stopping, and then you're going back to get the more information. Answer, then reverse. This is a very good one when someone is asking you the same question twice. So we used the example earlier, how much does it cost? Well, I'm not entirely sure. Want me to bring that up right now? Well, how much does it cost? Typically, the answers vary, the investment will vary based on whatever it is we're doing for the client. I'm not entirely sure how to answer that right now. Can I ask you a couple more questions to get a better understanding? And more importantly, why are we talking about this right now? Again, and then Vanessa's going to tell me, hopefully, if she's nice and cooperative, because sometimes you will get a combative prospect, that happens. But Vanessa will then tell me what it is that she's trying to communicate and the real reasons. Ask me a question. This is a neat one. I haven't used this too much personally, but I like it. And so it could be something about price, it could be any of those things. And it's about saying, well, that's a good question. I typically get asked that, but ask me another one, we're not there yet. And so that's moving away from it and saying, hey, we'll get to that, and I promise you, and always go back to that because you're making a commitment. But it's asking another question or getting them to bring up another one. That one's kind of neat when I was doing some reading. That's one I really want to try more on. Let's pretend. Let's pretend is a very, very cool one, and this is one of my favorites, actually. Because what you can do at that point is you can make a statement without putting yourself in a box. Because you could say, let's pretend, and we'll go back to price because it's one we typically get asked a lot. Let's pretend, for whatever reason, it's going to be expensive, or it's going to be X budget, it's going to be Y budget, whatever. So you're painting a picture of what the situation might look like, but you're not actually committing to it. So if they come back, I'm like, so let's pretend the video is going to be ready in 3 weeks. What would happen then? The client comes back and says, well, if it's not ready in 2, there's no way I'm going to do this. Great, no problem. I'm glad that you said that. Video will be ready in 2 weeks, no problem. Are you ready to go? Right, so without asking that follow-up question, you could have said 3 weeks, instantly disqualified. So that's another technique. Off the record.
Use that with budget too, right?
Absolutely.
Let's pretend it was going to be like $50,000. Well, how would that make you feel?
Yeah, exactly. Or so the map process is, let's pretend I came back and I was over budget. What would happen then? Right? And then they'll tell you.
I like let's pretend more than maybe any of these other ones, just because I've used it and it's really helped me understand what obstacles are in the mind of the person I'm talking to. So it really helps me, like, you're able to skip over it. You're like, well, let's pretend we figured that out, then what would happen? Well, then we need to figure this out. Okay, and let's say we figure that out, then what would happen? Then I'd be happy. Okay, so now I only know there are 2 things to work on. But I didn't know what that second thing was until I got past the first one. But I mean, there could be 5 things, there could be 7 things, it might only be 1 thing.
Absolutely. There's off the record as well. So you could say, typically, whatever, off the record. And then you're going to get into instant dialogue. So the second you say off the record, between you and me, whatever happens at this table, you're okay. It kind of breaks down some of those barriers, because a lot of times, and you guys have all heard this before, is people love to buy, but they hate to be sold. So when we go into a sales meeting a lot of times, and I've said it before, is, so what, you're going to come in here and you're going to bring your PowerPoint, you're going to bring this, you're going to bring that. That's not what we do. We're there to ask questions and find out about the business. And typically, for clients that have had bad sales experiences before, you walk in and their cards are up here. They don't want to tell you anything, because the second that they tell you something is the second that you're going to use that against them, or you're going to try to close them or do that in what's a typical sales situation. So unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that are doing this, and it makes it harder for people like us that are genuinely there to learn about their business to break down these walls. So that's when off the record, typically, I like to use it a little bit more in those situations, because it helps break down those things and create genuine conversation. And last but not least, and you're hoping I would, and you can finish that with anything, is what is it you're hoping we might be able to bring to the table? You're hoping I might be able to do, and then just trail off, and they'll fill in the blanks. So it doesn't always have to be something where you're, asking a full-on question. It's like the and. It's with that upswing in the voice, with that pause at the end, it's encouraging a response. So it doesn't have to be a full statement. Tip from the road: never answer an unasked question. This is one of the biggest things when it comes to disqualifiers is we know our process very, very well. We know what we've done for other clients. We know, how we might be able to add value to the business that we're speaking to. However, if we start interjecting this information into the process without being asked, it's another opportunity for us to be disqualified. So it could be something in the back of your head, you're saying, social media is going to be awesome for these people. They have a great product, it's beautiful, their target audience is going to fit as women or whatever it is on that side, so I would love to use Facebook. And you say, Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, I would love for you guys to be on Facebook because I think we can kill it for you and we've had some great client experiences. And they say, well, I'm a big fan of privacy. I don't use Facebook. I think it's stupid. I've never used it. I will never invest a cent in social media. Done. And so they didn't ask you the question. You're volunteering the information, and there you are again, sitting in that glass box of emotion, which is a clip that I wanted to add in here, and I completely forgot about. But that being said, never answering an unasked question. That's something to always keep in the back of your mind because we know a lot of things to say, we know a lot of techniques to use, but one of the strongest ones is silence.
That's a good one too. I use that in my personal life. I went to the Bay to buy a couch, and the guy on the sales board just volunteered. He's like, "Yeah, I give you a discount." And I was like, "I'll sell to you for this much." I was like, "Okay." And my 5 minutes name was like, "I'll be back later, Darren." I came back later. Darren was gone. So I go up to buy it. I'm like, yeah, Darren said he's going to sell me that couch and he's going to sell to me for this investment. And then my goes, oh, did Darren said that, didn't he? I was like, yeah. And then she just kept on saying these inviting statements at me. They're trying to get me to I don't know, to hook me or whatever, because she didn't believe that I was supposed to give a discounted price. But everything she kept on saying was a statement. So I didn't answer a single one of the statements that she said. And the couch, the price that Darren told me to give to me.
Yeah, I mean, a prime example of this is I recently went and I bought my BlackBerry Priv. Excited to buy it. I love BlackBerry, and primarily because it works so well with the calendar and the email. Those are the primary reasons why I own a BlackBerry. And the Priv in particular because it's got the keyboard and I've got bigger thumbs and I enjoy using a full keyboard. I walked in there on a Sunday afternoon, I believe, and I was in jeans, a ball cap, and a t-shirt. I walked in and I talked to the guy. I said, I'm here to look at a new device. Looked me up and down. I said, okay. And he's like, what are you thinking about? I'm like, what have you heard about the BlackBerry Priv? Does one of these again and goes, well, a lot of business people buy them. So you might want to look at something like the Samsung or the iPhone where you can get more apps. And instantly, I'm pissed because this is the reason I've been with BlackBerry forever. I work in Waterloo and Kitchener primarily. We're the home of BlackBerry. So it's a thing of pride almost for me. I'm passionate. I love my BlackBerry. I don't know if you guys catch that. And so right there, I'm mad at this guy because he didn't ask me a single question. He made judgments about me because I'm in ball cap and a t-shirt and jeans. And he doesn't know the fact that I worked for TELUS for close to 10 years. So I know what the devices are about, I know what I want, and I know how this works. 2, I am in business. So instantly he just classified me, and there we go. So I'm looking at him, he's looking at me, he's going, why is this guy pissed off? I'm like, why is this guy a dick? And so that's where not asking questions can get you into some trouble pretty quick.
Did you buy from him?
I did.
And it goes back to the idea that people want to buy, they need to be sold. So Chris really wanted this product no matter what happened, right?
Yeah.
Even though this guy sucked.
Well, I did my homework, right? I did my homework, I knew the device, I knew the plan, I knew exactly what I wanted, and I knew the store manager. I used to work with her. And so it's one of those things where you should have seen the look on his face later on when I started telling him these things. Whereas, oh yeah, I used to work with TELUS and who's your manager here, by the way? Shannon? Yeah, I used to work with Shannon. I was her assistant manager when I first started at TELUS. Tell her I say hello. So the next thing I'm going to get into is actually I'm going to combine two because when I was putting this presentation together, I knew it was going to be short on time. So negative reversing and pendulum theory, from my perspective, actually go hand in hand. So what pendulum theory is, it goes back to, I believe it's Newton's law, that an object in motion will stay in motion until something stops it. So essentially what this is going to be when a sales situation is over here, if you look at a clock, that would be around 9 o'clock. That's someone who's hostile. I don't want to talk to you. This conversation is over. 9 o'clock. 3 o'clock on the other side is a very happy prospect who's happy to see you. They're excited about it and they want to buy. It's sold. In the middle is neutral. So when you're looking at, when you're having an interaction with somebody, and you start looking for buying signals, or you start looking for pain, or you start looking for anger in any of these things, it's great to take a look at it as a pendulum itself and how to apply reverses to it and negative reverses. So an example of this is, we'll start with a hostile, because the neutral is the hardest one to get moving actually. But if you take a look at hostile, you have someone come in there and say, why should we work with you? I believe marketing's garbage. You could defend and say, no, marketing's great and everything else like that, and scramble or whatever you want to come up with on that side. Or you can simply say, you know what, you're probably right. You don't want to work with us. Done. One of two things is going to happen. One, they're going to say, well, this conversation's over, and you're done. That's okay, because chances are, it was done anyway. They didn't want to talk to you. It was it. And you never know what's happening on the other side of the phone. It couldn't be, or in the meeting either. They could be having a bad day. It's probably not you. Or on a soul perspective, we use this a lot to really draw back and pull away from a client, because you'll start hearing things like, I'm really excited to get going, or I can't wait to start this, or whatever it might be when those positive buying signals are coming out. However, it's important for us to stay behind the pendulum and not show those levels of excitement and just stay a little bit calm. And I get it, Seth, and I appreciate the fact that you really want to buy from us right now. But before we even get there, why do you think that's a good idea? Why is it about these things? And there's a lot of information that will come from that, because one, they're going to tell you what you did right so you can replicate it maybe. But two, they're going to tell you their reasons for doing business. And those are very, very powerful things. And we talk about how buying is, decisions are made on an intellectual level, but buying is actually done emotionally. So when we start talking about cottages, we start talking about, the real reasons. Maybe people want to spend more time with their family. That's all very emotional stuff that a lot of people don't get asked. So whether it's negative, positive, when we're taking a look at these things on the pendulum or reversing, or even in our questioning strategies at a whole, the end result is to find out more about the person you're speaking to. What are their reasons for doing what it is that they're doing, the questions that they're asking, and more importantly, why or why not are we going to do business together? And at that point, you close the book, shake hands, leave as friends, or you come back and you ring the bell. Typically, one of those two things happen. Questions?
Intrigue Media. Get noticed, get found.